Carrie Smith.
And I'm Emma Skip, and welcome to It's a Death Sentence.
This is a podcast that takes a lighter look at the heavier things.
So, if you want some of this... So somebody could have been dead for a week and end up with you.
Or maybe longer, and somebody might have said, oh, there's a really bad smell.
Or... A little bit of this.
I haven't got a tissue. I'll get you one. You got one. And plenty of this.
So original. Fucking hell. Then this is the show for you. Because
Life,
it's a death sentence.
So welcome back to It's a Death Sentence.
Today's episode is called Living Daylights.
And we're looking at, in particular, about fear and fear around death.
And in fact, it can be scary for some people, or for most people, and on the whole, we find it terrifying. Or maybe it's that we're just scared of the unknown.
People say that fear is the only fear itself, but I think that's a load of rubbish, because people are scared of everything. And I am a massive scaredy cat. Are you scared of anything?
I like to think I'm fairly brave as a human being. However, I did have an incident with a spider yesterday morning.
And it scared the bejesus out of you?
It really did. I mean, I know death is our subject, but I think we need to use some references here to what we do and don't find disgusting, frightening, etc. So if somebody fell and broke their arm in my house, I would not be fazed by this. I would crack on and get on with it. I'd probably, even if somebody, and it actually has happened in this house, dropped down and we weren't sure what was happening, I'd crack on with that. I can act in the moment where it's really necessary. I'm much a doer. But yeah, there are things that frighten me. Definitely things like the spider incident, you might have to edit some of this out, but it was just a giant spider. And I thought, I live in a house on my own and there are 2 children here and there's only one person that's going to deal with this massive monster.
And that's me.
And I just thought, who are you? You're not frightened of things like that. You've been on stage with, thousands of people. Why is it bothering you, this spider? But he bothered me, so I had to keep him under a cup all day. And then, of course, I had to deal with him that night to put the kids in the bath. So then I had to kill him really quickly. And he squished, he popped. It was rank. It was absolutely horrible. But
God.
That whole process, as funny as it might sound, gave me the physical things that we get from fear. So I got those goose pimples. I got that kind of slight nauseated feeling.
Oh God.
Just from something as small as that. But actually, I've seen snakes abroad and things like that. They don't bother me. But when we think about death and being frightened, for me the association is always with horror movies.
Yeah, and I love
things,
horror.
And this is where you and I differ.
Yeah, we're complete opposites.
So Carrie...
I mean, I'm not scared of... I love horror, but I'm still scared of the dark. I'm a little bit scared of the dark, isn't it mad? Yeah, I have to have the light on when I go downstairs. My husband's always taking the mickey out of me because I've basically always, whenever I go anywhere, I'm flicking lights on.
And yet you will watch Saw or something equally as horrible as that.
Yeah, I just love watching a horror movie.
I would, if you got me to watch a horror film or anything like that now, I would not be able to unsee it and live it out for the rest of my days in my mind.
See, I actually quite like that feeling of being scared.
Scared to death.
Obviously not dying from it, but
yeah.
It's a bit of a thrill, isn't it? Well,
it's adrenaline, I suppose.
Yeah,
We're talking about extremes, aren't we? So there's extremes, there's things that we choose to be frightened of. Is that what you're saying? So you would actively choose to have that kind of thrill?
I like the jeopardy of it.
Okay.
And I think it elicits feelings of the unknown, and it allows us to see things that we wouldn't necessarily see. Mm-hmm. I mean, I probably would see some of what is shown in horror movies, but I think it allows you to sort of be in a different headspace almost.
Do you think then, Carrie, that your job has dispelled that for you? Do you think you always were like this? Did you always watch horror films or think about death and all the things around it that are unknown things and not be fazed by it? Or is it a product of your job?
I think I've always loved horror. I think it's it was massive in the 80s, wasn't it, horror?
Yeah.
And my brother's a little bit older, and I just remember like him and my uncle Jack. He used to he was a massive horror fan, and whenever we went round there when we were little, he would like, well, sort of probably too young to be watching them. He'd put on a horror movie.
It was the 80s, everything like that happened.
Yeah, there was no regulations. You could basically watch what you wanted, and I mean, I look at the horrors now that were out then, and they're terrible.
In comparison?
Yeah, in comparison to the new ones. Some of them I find I'm not a fan of gore.
Hang on a minute. We're gonna have to rewind here, Carrie. If you're not a fan of gore and you watch horror, I mean, I don't watch it because of things like gore. Actually, but like that, it's blood and guts and stuff. Doesn't really bother me.
So
I am frightened of people and the evil that resides in them, and more.
The devil.
Yeah. No, even that. I am more frightened of the fact that somebody thinks of these ideas and concepts that become films, that become pop culture, huge followings. And I think somebody somewhere thought of that awful rank idea.
What a psychopath.
And they're just walking around, So I'm more frightened, actually, of what we do know rather than what we don't know, I think. I'm more frightened of what's I don't really believe in hell and heaven because I'm not religious. I think it walks the planet every day. I'm more frightened of that than I am, I don't know, some spook.
I concur. I probably would be more frightened of humans than anything supernatural. But there's still... I just enjoy watching it. I'm not necessarily... I don't necessarily believe it all, but I like sort of the supernatural sort of movies more than I would like gore. I like supernatural,
So the unknown.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about the unknown, and let's link this back in with our living daylights, is it that, Carrie? Do you think that people are frightened of? Is it more being scared to death or being scared of dying is because we don't know? We don't know. We don't have the answers, or is it more? Let's just talk about it between you and I at the moment. For you, is it more circumstantial thing, like in the way you might go, or is it more just not knowing what happens afterwards or what's left behind? What is it for you?
For me, I think it's... See the light flash then?
Yeah, don't worry about that. I've got new lights and it's the dimmer switch.
There is nothing. Spirit.
Oh, sorry, I've gone round the house and I've exercised the whole thing, so it's
lovely,
fine.
That's fine. Don't worry. Just because you knew I was coming.
Yeah, I did it at 3:30 this afternoon. I hoovered up and quick exorcism, and we're on our way.
And then we're on our way.
Yeah.
When it comes to being scared of death, I'm not scared of dying.
No.
I'm not scared of not being here anymore, because I don't think I will know too much about it. Obviously, it's sad to leave everybody behind. I think for me and for most people, it's the thought of how I'm going to die. I don't want to be in loads of pain. I've said that before, I think.
Yeah, and I totally and utterly agree
I think
with that.
that's what scares me more, is thinking that I'm going to die in some gruesome manner and it's going to be really fucking painful.
Yeah.
And that's what puts me
on
edge.
I think for the vast majority of people, that's probably the same thing. I think if you've ever had the, experience of watching a loved one go through illness, let's say, for example, where it deteriorates, I think that, that will make you fearful. Just watching the human body disintegrate in front of your eyes over a period of time, or it can be very short. It could be both. It could be either. I think that is very frightening when you know that person is in pain and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I think actually you end up wishing them on their way. I did. I'm not even frightened to admit that. I certainly did. I think you get to a point where enough is enough. So from a fear point of view, I think we share that value, Carrie, that we are both scared of being in pain. But who in their right mind is going to sit here and go, I'm not. I really like the idea of pain. I suppose if you're really into S&M or something, but
yeah, some people like pain, don't they?
Yeah, but how much? I don't want prolonged pain for months and months until I
die from it. Yeah. That's it. That's classed as misadventure.
This is true. Yeah. Well, let's look at your work again. So, if there were anyone who would have good reason to be scared of death, or people who have died, or anything, weird or supernatural,
Yeah.
you would be the woman to ask. And we did touch on this before.
Yeah.
You've never had that experience that...
I've never really had an experience at work, and I'm not scared when I'm at work. And as much as I'm scared of the dark, I wouldn't walk around work in the dark. Don't get me wrong.
Well,
I wouldn't walk anywhere.
Fall over them.
Absolutely.
And it's disrespectful.
Well, they are put away, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't walk anywhere. I wouldn't go anywhere in the dark. So I'm not scared of the dark because of the dead.
Yeah.
I'm just scared of the dark because I want to see where I'm going.
Can we just go back to the horror film thing for a minute? Do you sit with the lights on watching the horror film then?
No, I sit in the dark.
Oh my God. You're a complex woman.
I know. Some people would call it something else. But yeah.
Let's go to this. Some people think it's a bad omen to talk about death and that it can bring it on. What's your experience of that?
So I've heard people say a bit like manifesting.
Okay.
So if
the good way.
Yeah, but the negative effect. So traditionally Irish people as well will say that they don't like to talk about. My mum definitely don't like to talk about too much death because they think it brings it to their door.
Well, but in many ways, I mean, we could make that quite relatable to, like you said, about manifesting good things. We know that what we give out, we get back.
Yeah.
Even on a really basic level. So perhaps there is a point there. But
but I also
I don't know if I agree with it though.
Yeah, I also think that death is inevitable. So it's going to happen at some point. So why are we spending our time worrying about it? We should be able to talk about it.
Well, this is the whole idea behind this podcast, isn't it? Is we've realised that the taboo is still live and kicking, ironically.
Yeah.
And that we're not talking about it. And actually, the more people you do talk to, the more you realise that they have so many questions, or they've got so many differing opinions. Let's just go back to films again, because this is our kind of like yardstick for measuring what things frighten us and stuff like that. So we've talked about horror films, but I want to talk a little bit about this around death, how popular culture, let's say our films that we watch or books that we read, whatever, they romanticise death in a way that, really should take away the fear. So rather than adding, to that whole thing, they're sort of setting us up, if you like, for, you're not very well, you've only got 4 months to live, and that person goes, oh, that's okay, I've had a really good life and really peaceful about it. No, I've not seen that in my life. Have you?
No, nor have I. In fact, a lot of people who find out that they haven't got long to live, in my experience, are really fucking angry about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think why have we done this in films and in popular culture generally to try and come away from the idea of the only way we can report death through media is by frightening people to death. So we tried to go completely the other way.
I know, it's like sublime to the ridiculous.
It's actually, oh right, you've not got long to live. Well, don't worry about it. I've had a really good life, and I'll see you on the other side.
Yeah.
I don't think
it's mad, isn't
there's
it?
nothing. I can't think of anything in pop culture that bridges that gap. So I'm open to comments from our listeners. That would be really good.
I think they tend to try and elicit emotional response.
Yeah, of course.
So when you're watching a horror film,
Dramatic pause.
yeah, dun dun dun.
Yeah.
It basically elicits a response that stimulates adrenaline. And when they romanticize death and they look at how sad and beautiful the time that they have left is, and they love their, tell all their loved ones that they love them and they're so proud and all that, it elicits an emotional response to make people sad.
So we're just always emotional chasers, basically.
Yeah,
just trying
just
to find
an emotional wreck.
it.
But, so we're either going from one emotion or the other. And that is what makes it watchable, because we can relate to that when we watch it.
Yeah, it's a human, but it's a basic human behaviour, isn't it?
Everyone's been scared. Yeah. You can relate to that. Everyone's been sad.
And actually, it would be a very boring interview, wouldn't it, if we interviewed somebody and said, how do you feel about death? And they just said, sort of indifference, really. Yeah. Just neither here nor there. I'm really looking forward to purgatory. That sounds really good. I wanted to be able to say this word. So you very cleverly did your research here, and I think our listeners should know that there is a word for the fear of death, and it is...
Thanatophobia.
Thanatophobia.
Yeah, it's an actual medical condition.
So, and that is somebody who suffers from tremendous anxiety around dying.
Yeah.
So, have you ever met anybody like that?
I don't know anyone who's that hung up on it.
No, I don't.
I'm a bit bipolar, I think. I swing from like, because of obviously being at work and you see all sorts of deaths.
Yeah.
I go from one day being like, oh my God, just live your life. You never know when it's going to be over, to like, oh my God, I'm going to slip and break my neck and then I'm going to die. So I like swing from one emotional...
Well, I'm not surprised doing the job you
Yeah,
do.
I think it's just sometimes things get you more than others. But I wouldn't say I have got thanatophobia.
No, and I imagine if people do... So again, if anyone is listening to this and this is something you suffer from, we'd probably like to hear from you. I think that'd be really interesting.
Absolutely.
And we would be, of course, be very, mindful about your condition. But it would be quite good to learn a bit more about it, because as with any anxiety that is like massive anxiety, it's debilitating. Probably stops you living your life, ironically, to its capacity.
Yeah.
Whatever you're anxious about.
And actually, I spoke to a lady, I did an interview with her, and she does touch on the fear of getting on with things in her life, since losing her loved one, because she feels like she's responsible for like the rest of the family. And she sort of touched on the fact that it's sort of stopping her from doing things. So I wonder if maybe it's a slight... I'm not saying she's...
I wonder if there's a word for that as well. So that, what you've just touched on is, she's not afraid of the dying, she's afraid of living after the dying.
Yeah.
And I think there must be a phrase for that,
there's got to
where
be.
somebody, you've lost a loved one and you're actually afraid to move on.
Yeah.
And you can't, or or you feel very guilty. I think lots of people must relate to that. They must relate to the feeling of, how can I possibly laugh again? How can I, be okay again? How can I go and do what I want to do? But of course it's all part of life, isn't it?
I think looking at death, obviously, it's a representation of pain and illness for a lot of people, isn't it? So that's the thing that can be scary, especially when you've lost somebody.
And also, let's talk about the fear again, the pain, and you've lost somebody. But physical pain is also the association of the circumstances you're in. So are you in physical pain at home, or are you in physical pain in a hospital where you don't want to be, that you find frightening, that you find clinical, that you find all of those aspects? I think that would frighten me.
Yeah, that can impact, I suppose, can't it?
Yeah,
how you feel about...
you're having to have, let's say you're having to have treatment that is extremely painful and not very nice, and you're also having to commute to a giant hospital to do it, or sit around and wait with other people who are sad, and, I think all of those things, it's not a very holistic approach to palliative care, is it?
Absolutely not. And I mean, you would be pissed off, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
you're
100%.
bound to be.
I think this is perhaps why some people choose to, if they've been dealt the death sentence in some way, and they've got an option of having really invasive surgeries or medication or intervention like that, they choose not to.
And I think I would choose not to myself personally.
Is that based on your job, or having worked in the medical industry?
I just think if it wasn't going to change the outcome, for me, I wouldn't want to spend my time feeling unwell.
Yeah, and I think there's a thing that if you're a relatively young person, let's say somebody under the age of 60, and can we prolong their life by some very invasive surgery, and it might give them another year or two, or can they have some chemotherapy if it's cancer? It's the go-to that everyone thinks about. It might give you another, but some people supersede this and they go on and on.
Yeah,
and there's always that chance. And some people just have an absolutely bloody awful time receiving surgeries and radiation and chemotherapy, and their quality of life at the end of their life is much worse than it would have been had they... that frightens me.
That scares me. I mean, 2 years of painful surgeries and treatment just to have an extra 2 years to go to appointments, to not be able to leave the house.
Yeah. That's not really living, is it? But then I suppose you could argue, if that person is getting to see their family and have a quality of life for those 2 years, very personal. It's not one that you can just comment broadly on, is it?
Yeah, and it's a very individual choice, isn't it? That is, that would be... But, scary nonetheless. A choice that you'd have to make, that's terrifying. Having to think about that, you're going to have to make that choice. Yeah. I think that's what's scary about it.
Or, I mean, the other thing is, and again, this is one that if anyone's got experience of this, they could maybe let us know, but if you've had to make that choice for somebody else.
Yes, that would weigh heavily on you, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it? But, if you're watching somebody, let's say, who's on life support or something like that, and it's your choice, it comes down to you if you're next of kin, that must be extremely frightening, having that responsibility.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Death is nothing to be scared of, and, it's...
No, that's
not nice or pretty. It's definitely more Addams Family than it is Love Island. But it's inevitable, isn't it? It's going to happen. It's the one certainty.
I think it's... So I read a book while I was away, and it's called The Best Seat in the Universe. And what we'll do is we'll pop a link to the book in the notes of this episode. But it's a book that is based on a journey transcending into death. And I love my philosophy, so I think it's really readable and very, very palatable. But it is looking at how we live life, all the decisions we make and where it takes us to. And it's also asking these really big questions around what happens after death, which is obviously one of our favourite questions in interviews. So for any of those, looking for something to read, I'll pop something in about that, I think, and I'll give it to you so you can do a little book review while we're here as well.
I shall review it next time.
Lovely.
But yeah, I think going back to my job briefly, people always say, I bet only weirdos work in the mortuary, and they
know you quite well.
They know me well. But I think they think it's something to be scared of. I don't know if that's because it's a mortuary and there's lots of dead people.
But I think this I made a note about this, and I don't know, we've discussed it. I think all young people, let's say, from the age of 16, let's not frighten them to death, we need to have exposure to death. We need to have exposure to illness. We need to have exposure to, like I said earlier, palliative care. We need to have exposure to nursing care. We need to have exposure to death itself. And the reason people are frightened about it is because we don't see it.
Yeah,
culturally,
it's behind doors,
it's a taboo that we're not seeing. And I think this is where you get the two sides of it, which is being frightened, which is what we're talking about today, or being fascinated.
Yeah, it's
and
that morbid curiosity.
Let's not forget that that word is absolutely bang on for a lot of people. I'm fascinated. I don't think it makes me a morbid person or a particularly sad person. I've just got a lot of questions about lots of things, but I'm fascinated because I don't know. I've never seen it. I've not seen it beyond a certain point. And
I think I do find that people either are really fascinated in the mortuary and what you do there, or they're really disgusted.
Really?
You get two extremes. So people are either, oh, I love that, tell me about it, or, oh, that's disgusting.
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
You get two extremes.
Would you say that's a 50-50 thing with people, or is it more? Does it lean more one way than the other?
I think more people are interested than disgusted.
Yeah.
But there are definitely
that's progress.
Yeah. But there are definitely a big portion of people who are really turned off by death, or the thought of you having to touch a dead body. They're like, oh, that's disgusting.
So, this is just slightly off topic, but regarding your job, if somebody were wanting to get into that line of work, other than going to work for a funeral home, an undertaker, if they wanted to do what you do, they're going to have to go through a nursing qualification, presumably?
Well, they have to retrain. They'd have to come and do a trainee position.
Okay.
But they're very hard to get.
Yeah.
So the exposure
isn't available. People. Yeah.
A lot of people, they either want the job or they can't get into the job. So a lot of people you find, they do start through the funeral trade.
Okay. And so unless you're a medical student becoming a doctor who's, dissecting human bodies at university, there's no one else really having any insight on a practical level. There's very little available for people to see or learn about in that way.
Yeah, so that job is very niche, obviously, sort of, removing organs and doing the actual physical post-mortem. That's why a lot of people, they go into it through funeral directing, and they might work in the mortuary there, which would be more maybe assisting the embalming or doing whatever. So they do see.
And that really is the only other route into that.
Yeah, probably. And that would give them more of a chance at interview to get a trainee job than somebody who had maybe no experience. I wouldn't say it would guarantee it, but
that's interesting.
It could be something that you could build on for an interview.
Yeah.
But they are hard to come by the jobs.
Yeah, I imagine. So to round this up then, what we're frightened of, by and large, we're frightened of pain. Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
And I think emotional pain is as terrifying
But
as well as physical pain.
That's for the person who's left behind.
Yeah.
That's for the people who are left behind after the loved one has gone. Yeah. That isn't for you. Once you've got unless you hold those values where you believe in reincarnation of some sort, and we'll discuss that at some point. But otherwise, for you, your body has ceased to live. So there is nothing that we're aware of, unless the afterlife is really painful, in which case, that is something to be frightened of. So let's not think about that. I'm sorry. But yeah, ultimately, what we're saying here is we're not really frightened of death itself. We're frightened of the process that brings you to death.
Yeah, definitely. I just think it's a waste of time being scared of dying, because everybody's going to have to go through it. So you're not on your own, Bab. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's going to do it at some point.
Yeah.
And I just think that for me, and for most people like yourself, definitely it's the thought of being in pain that puts me off.
Yeah. But answers on a postcard.
Absolutely. So, let us know. What are you scared of?
Yeah. Let us know. I can't actually try and imagine being scared of the moment of death. If anything, I think by then, let's assume that all of us are in a bit of a state of disrepair, even if we're 100 years old. We're like, ready to go, sweetheart. And I think I'd probably welcome it with open arms and think, what we got now? What's coming up?
Absolutely. What's next?
Yeah, absolutely.
So next time we're going to be talking to a listener called Faye about her experiences of death, and she lost her mum, and she's lost quite a few people actually. It's quite a sad story. So it's her talking about her experiences with death, but on the whole, she's very positive, believe it or not.
That sounds like somebody I'd like to meet.
She's lovely.
Okay. So thank you for listening, and until next time,
let's keep living, and as always,
we're dying to talk to you. So thank you, dear listeners. If you've enjoyed our show, then please do all the stuff that will help promote us.
Like and share our podcast and follow us on socials, and please subscribe too. If you've got any feedback, it's most welcome, so please contact us.
Likewise, if there's a subject you'd like us to cover, please do get in touch, and thank you for your support.
We are dying to talk to you.